Kia ora, Marky here, the grizzled walrus of demystification. So before we get started on today's topic, I want to say a big thank you, a big welcome to my new subscribers. I've just had a big wave of new subscribers join me, so thank you for that, and I hope you enjoy being with this channel. You'll see that this channel covers a wide variety of things. You'll also see this channel's kind of a bit rough and ready, and I hold the phone the wrong way. I record it using an iPhone, I record it the wrong way around. I have ADHD, so if I'm very spontaneous and impulsive, so I make videos on the spur of the moment. So, seldom do I kind of set up I have a stand and things, but seldom do I set it up because I'm just in the moment. Okay, so it's a rough and ready, homely kind of channel. It's not slick, there's not lots of graphics and things like that. Maybe that will come one day, but for the moment it's a kind of a personal channel. It's like we're friends here on this channel. So that's the style. Some people like that, some people don't, but that's the beauty of YouTube is, we can find the people that we like. So today I want to talk about Halloween. And interestingly, I'm kind of dressed appropriately. I chose this bandeau to wear today. I'm off to the beach later. Not consciously thinking I was going to do a video on Halloween. That kind of came later. And I've also got my Spooky Wolf t-shirt on as well, which again is by coincidence. And that dates when I used to do spooky tours around Dartmoor Zoo at night with the wolves howling and things. We bought these as part of that. A quick kind of plug for my video on Do Wolves Howl at the Full Moon? I'll put that in the links. And if you're interested in spooky stuff, although this video is going to be surprisingly unspooky, but if you're interested in spooky stuff, we do have videos on that. We cover lots of things on this channel. So Halloween, I want to demystify it. What is it? Why do we celebrate it, for those of us who do? And where does it come from? And there's a few kind of surprises in this video, things you wouldn't expect that link in my mind to Halloween. So we'll cover those as well. So a few surprises coming up. So first of all, why is it called Halloween? So it comes from All Hallows Eve, which is a church festival or a church thing. Probably not called a festival, but what's the word I'm looking for? Put it in the comments. What's the correct word? It'd be useful to know. So you have All Saints and All Hallows, everything holy celebrated. So it's just before that. Okay, so it would kind of seem, as we celebrate all things spooky, that it's kind of like all the ghosties and ghoulies and kind of unholy things coming out to play, because the next day is going to be full of saints and holiness and isn't going to be very conducive to their entertainment. And I think that was kind of overlaid by Christianity when it came in. There is something in that. But actually, it's certainly not about evil. Halloween is not about evil. It may be becoming so, arguably. But Halloween essentially, and I'm coming here from a European perspective. So Halloween was the Celtic New Year festival. And festival is the right word in this case. So it was the New Year. So it's interesting. Why a New Year at this time of year? Because you're starting to go into darkness. It's starting to get dark. So it's a little bit like when you plant a seed, it goes into darkness and begins to germinate in the darkness before it comes into the light. So going into the darkness is the time of the Celtic New Year. And there's a few things about the Celtic New Year celebrations. So two significant things. One is it was believed to be a time, as you go into the darkness, so darkness represents death and the unknown. So it's a time that was believed to be a good time for connecting with those who passed on, the ancestors. Okay. And that kind of ancestor kind of stuff in this context comes into two categories really. There's personal ancestors, so there's Auntie Nellie, or your parents or dear ones that you've lost, that have passed over, that you still want to remember. And there's kind of tribal ancestors. And nearly all, wherever you go in the world, if you look at indigenous cultures, they all have a reverence for ancestors. That's before their cultures, before their religion and their traditions were kind of spoiled by other influences, by Western influences. They all had that. You can look at almost any culture, anywhere in the world, indigenous culture, pre-Christian culture or pre-Muslim culture, they all have this kind of reverence for ancestors. And often it's about tribal ancestors. It's not necessarily about personal, individual people. It's something kind of deeper, really. It's about kind of reverence for the people that have gone before. So there's quite a lot in that. So in terms of the Celtic time, that was the time when, both Auntie Nellie and the tribal ancestors, and this is all about wisdom. It's about connecting with the wisdom of the people, the elders, the people that have gone before. And it was a time for reverence for them and connecting with them. And there's kind of, echoes of that in other things, Mexican Day of the Dead, and stuff like that. And the other thing is a fire festival, which kind of makes sense as you're going into darkness to have a big fire. Okay. So this is where I was going to do a video on Guy Fawkes. In fact, I think I will. So there'll be a bit of an overlap with this and the video on Guy Fawkes. But people talk about bonfire night. They call it Guy Fawkes night, which I hate. I loathe it being called Guy Fawkes night. Partly because it's actually religious. It's all about celebrating religious persecution and hatred. Because Guy Fawkes was a Catholic, a terrorist, really, if you like. And Catholics were hated at that particular period. They were persecuted, and they celebrated his torture and death, which isn't very nice in my book. That's not a good thing to celebrate. So, but the thing is, bonfire night was going on before Guy Fawkes. It got hijacked by this is what often happens to these things, they get hijacked. So bonfire night comes from the original Halloween fires. So it was a fire festival already. People were already celebrating stuff. So they hijacked it for a political reason. So yeah, very few people know. That's one of the little surprises I wanted to throw in. So the Celtic festival wasn't called Halloween, it was called Samhain. Some people will describe that pronounce that differently, but that's the general consensus. Most people say Samhain, although it's spelt Samhain. And you'll still see this word in modern day Gaelic languages and Brittonic languages. And I believe in Scottish Gaelic, the word Samhain actually is also the word for the whole month of October. So I think it was also something to do with blood here, because it's a time of slaughter. So some of the spooky stuff may come from the fact that lots of cattle were slaughtered. And things like, we use kind of pumpkins, but in the Western world it used to be turnips or swedes. It used to be hollowed out and used as lanterns. And so basically a candle was just a way of inviting. I got kind of somebody laughing in the distance, which kind of I suppose adds some spooky ambience, some witches cackling. So the candle that's now in the pumpkin used to be a light that was lit to show the ancestors the way home. And this kind of spirit stuff, I suppose I'm just thinking, if you go to Thailand, there's spirit houses everywhere, and people put food on the spirit house, just welcoming the spirits sort of back in. So that was swede and turnip land, the same thing, swede and a turnip. If you've ever tried to carve out a swede or a turnip, it's a nightmare. Okay, so the pumpkin obviously is not something from Britain, from kind of most parts of Europe. It was kind of came over from America with American Halloween traditions, and although it's not kind of canon, we're very grateful because pumpkins are really easy to kind of hollow out and great fun to hollow out. Whereas if you try and do it with a turnip, it's a nightmare. You probably kind of cut yourself as well. So there's kind of an adaptation there, but the pumpkin was not the original vegetable of choice, if a pumpkin is a vegetable. I'll have to do a video on that. So there we go. So fire festival, a time when the ancestors were believed to draw closer, both tribal ancestors and individual, family ancestors. And when Christianity came to Europe, the policy was not to stamp out the old traditions and the old sacred sites, but to try and kind of incorporate them into Christianity. And we have a record of actual order from the Pope telling people to convert pagan sacred sites into Christian sacred sites, so that the people carried on attending. So Christianity, people think that Christianity is kind of, is at odds with paganism. But actually, Christianity has a lot of paganism, enveloped within it. It's kind of sucked up a lot of paganism. along the way, if you like. So Christianity kind of overlaid this kind of All Saints, All Hallows, and then we started to look at contacting ancestors in a different way. So Christianity is often is very scared of spirits. It's a big thing in the Bible. It talks about, discerning spirits. Is this an evil spirit or is this an angelic spirit? And certainly mainstream Christianity doesn't really allow for ancestral spirits. It's very suspicious of things like ancestral spirits. Okay. So therefore, what started as a very benign, your benign and loving ancestors coming back to guide you, became something that was seen as ghosties and ghoulies and spooks and evil spirits and that kind of thing. Because that's the way Christianity has put its kind of slant on things like that. So here in New Zealand, it's kind of quite interesting because that happened very recently when missionaries came in. I say recently, sort of 200-300 years. When missionaries came in, they saw all the amazing kind of carvings of deities on the marae, which is like the meeting places for traditional meeting places for Maori people. Some of the missionaries said, no, these are evil spirits. You must destroy these, and a lot of amazing, beautiful Maori carving and art was lost. And this happened recently. It was in the news just a couple of months ago. Some idiot destroyed an ancient piece of Maori carving because he was a fundamental Christian and saw that as an evil spirit. So one person's benign spirit is another person's evil spirit, and that's really how kind of Halloween came about. Now, there's another little kind of interesting little kind of twist to Halloween. Most people will say this is nothing to do with it and it's purely coincidence, but on so when you get into a spiritual, mystical level, there is no coincidence. Okay? So I think it's interesting that certainly in the UK, I'm not sure if this is celebrated in other places, but Remembrance Sunday, Guy Fawkes, Bonfire Night, and Halloween are all around the same time of year, so we remember our ancestors. Now, these days it's not a general remembrance of ancestors, which I think is a shame. It's a remembrance of veterans who died in combat. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for acknowledging veterans that have died in combat. It's a huge sacrifice, and it's terrible that we send people off to war. We're doing it, it's nothing's changed, it's still happening. Coffins flying back into the country. It's probably going to happen again soon. So I'm all for honouring people who've died in combat. But I kind of, again, think it feels to me with some kind of, definitely some, because I'm a druid, albeit quite a lapsed one, I kind of feel a little bit like an ancient tradition again has been hijacked, which is kind of fine. That's what happens, and I like the way one thing gets overlaid with another, and then you get this kind of richer composite. But I think there's a loss for me in the fact that it's not actually a time of year where we remember everyone, where we still remember our ancestors. Now, whether this is a spiritual thing or just an emotional thing, I think it would actually be really good to have a time of year where we just remember people, where everybody, in a community, not necessarily together, but a time when everybody, when it's kind of celebrated across the whole community, a time where we do think fondly of our ancestors, remember them. People might have church services in remembrance, or they might light a candle, or say a prayer, or look at old photographs or something like that. I feel it's a bit one-dimensional that we just celebrate the war dead. So please don't kind of send me, if you're a veteran, or please don't give me angry comments about this, because I don't think we should change the war memorial celebrations in any way. But I think maybe another day in October or early November, around about that time, we should, it would be healthy. And I think as a Western cultures, we don't deal with grief very well. We don't deal with death very well. And I think something maybe a little bit more like the Mexican Day of the Dead around about that time of year. So I always have a kind of reservation about wearing a poppy. Normally I do wear a poppy. Sometimes I'm not, and sometimes I've been a bit uncomfortable with it. And it's not out of any disrespect for. I mean, I come from a military family as well, so it's not out of any disrespect. It's just purely because I kind of think, well, hang on, we're missing out on all the ancestors. So whatever you do for Halloween, have a good one. If you're a Christian and you celebrate All Saints and All Hallows, that's fantastic. If you're going to take part in any Remembrance Day parades, I salute you. If you're going to have a bit of fun with some kind of spookiness, fantastic. If you're a pagan and it's a serious religious festival, I wish you a good one. So whatever your creed, colour, beliefs, pegadillos, I wish you a blessed Samhain, Halloween, whatever you want to call it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please subscribe, and I will be back with more. I'll do one on Guy Fawkes at some point. That'll be a ranty one. Look out for that. Rangy Mario.